My parents ignored my brother's toxic bullying for years and enabled everything. So when he finally faced consequences, they tried to make me feel guilty for it. I'm Katie, I'm 28, and I need to talk about the absolutely messed up dynamic that my family created around my brother Ryan's behavior, and how my parents are currently trying to rewrite history and make me the villain in a story where I'm literally just a survivor. The golden boy with a mean streak. Ryan is 31. He's charming, successful, or at least he was, and until very recently, completely untouchable in our family. Growing up, Ryan was the kind of kid who was good at everything sports, academics, making people laugh. He had this magnetic personality that made adults instantly like him. Teachers loved him. Parents of my friends loved him. Even our own parents absolutely adored him. They also completely overlooked the fact that he was absolutely horrible to me. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being dramatic. Ryan spent approximately 17 years systematically bullying me, and my parents spent approximately 17 years telling me that I was too sensitive, or being overdramatic, or asking for it. When Ryan would call me fat starting when I was like 12, my mom would say, "Oh, he's just teasing. Brothers do that. You're not fat, so why does it bother you?" When he'd mock me in front of his friends, making fun of how I talked, how I looked, the clothes I wore, my interests, anything he could grab onto, I was the one who got in trouble for being rude to your brother if I called him out. When he literally spread rumors about me in high school that damaged friendships and my reputation, my dad's response was, "Boys will be boys. He's probably just trying to impress his friends." Ryan got worse as he got older. High school was genuinely awful. He'd do things like change the Wi-Fi password and lock me out of the internet as a prank. He'd delete my homework files off the shared family computer. He'd take food out of my lunchbox and blame me for being a slob. He'd deliberately invite his friends over on days he knew I had anxiety about social situations and make sure they targeted me with jokes. And every single time, my parents would minimize it or blame me somehow. The worst part? Ryan knew they had his back. He knew he could do whatever he wanted to me because there would be no consequences. So he just kept escalating. Adulthood, and the continued enablement. You'd think that once we both moved out, things would improve. Ryan went to a good college, got a job at a financial firm, eventually started working for a hedge fund. He was making serious money. He got engaged to this lovely woman named Sarah, bought a house in a nice neighborhood, looked like he had his life figured out. And yeah, he mostly stopped living in the same house as me. But the bullying didn't really stop, it just evolved. At family events, he'd make jokes about my career choices. I became a social worker, which is important and meaningful work to me, but Ryan would literally say things like, "Oh, that's nice that you're doing charity work, Katie. Some of us are actually making real money." At my cousin's wedding, he told a story about me to a group of people that made everyone laugh at my expense. During a Thanksgiving dinner when I was going through a breakup, he was incredibly cruel about it in a way that had our whole family laughing like my pain was just comedic material for him. My parents would laugh too. They'd always laugh. When I tried to address it, my dad would say something like, "He's just having fun. Can't you take a joke?" And my mom would say, "He's your brother. He loves you. You're reading too much into it. No, he doesn't love me. You don't bully someone you love for decades and then dismiss their feelings about it." But here's the thing, my parents had a narrative about our relationship. In their minds, we were close. We were a tight-knit family. Ryan was successful and funny and generally a good guy, never mind the part where he was cruel to his own sister. And I was the sensitive one. The one who couldn't take a joke. The one who was unnecessarily bitter toward her wonderful brother. That narrative was so much more convenient than the truth. About 3 years ago, things escalated in a way that finally made it impossible for people to ignore Ryan's behavior. Ryan was working at this pretty prestigious hedge fund, making like $400,000 plus a year with bonuses. He was one of their golden boys. Brilliant trader, good at bringing in clients, very charismatic in the way that makes people want to trust him with their money. Then a new junior analyst started at his firm. Her name was Michelle, and she was brilliant, really sharp, creative, good instincts for the market. She was young, maybe 25 at the start, and she was working under Ryan's mentorship. I don't know all the details because this is where it gets into stuff that came out later, but what I do know is that Ryan spent about 2 years systematically bullying and harassing Michelle. He'd criticize her work publicly in meetings in a way that was humiliating. He'd exclude her from important projects. He allegedly told her that women didn't belong in trading because they were too emotional. He made jokes about her appearance. According to things I heard later, he'd actually physically intimidate her in ways that made her feel unsafe. And when she reported it, she was told to try to work it out with him, or maybe this job isn't right for you. So she escalated it. She went to corporate HR with extensive documentation. She had emails. She had messages. She had recordings in states where it's legal to record without consent. She had witnesses who were willing to come forward. The company launched an investigation. The investigation and the truth coming out. I didn't know any of this was happening at the time. My parents knew a little bit. Ryan had mentioned that Michelle had made some accusations that he said were absolutely ridiculous and just her being oversensitive. My parents, of course, believed him without question. They were on his side immediately. The investigation took about 4 months. During that time, Ryan's behavior at family events was different. He was quieter. He drank more. There was a tension to him that hadn't been there before. But my parents just coddled him, telling him that it would all blow over and that they believed him and that Michelle was probably just trying to cause trouble. Then, in September of last year, the hedge fund fired him. Not just fired him. They issued a statement saying they'd found substantial evidence of workplace harassment and a hostile work environment, and they were implementing new protocols to prevent this behavior in the future. It became public. It made the news because it involved a financial firm and because multiple witnesses came forward. One article quoted Michelle talking about how she'd been made to feel like she was the problem when she tried to report it. Another talked about a pattern of behavior that suggested Ryan had done this to other people too. Suddenly, the golden boy narrative fell apart. Hard. His company put him on a blacklist, or so I heard through the grapevine. Other firms in the industry distanced themselves. Sarah, his wife, apparently spent about 2 weeks trying to convince him to go to therapy and actually address his behavior, and when he refused and instead spent that time making excuses and blaming everyone else, she asked for a separation. My brother went from being a hotshot financial guy with a beautiful house and a perfect life to being unemployed, estranged from his wife, and publicly known as a workplace harasser. And my parents completely fell apart. The guilt-tripping campaign. Here's where it gets really messed up. Instead of saying, "Wow, we need to talk about how we enabled Ryan's bullying behavior," my parents decided that the real victim here was Ryan. They called me about a week after the news came out and my mom was crying. Not like emotional crying, like devastated her son has been ruined crying. She said, "Katie, your brother is in crisis. He's losing everything. This is a really hard time for him, and we need to support him as a family." I said, "I understand he's going through something difficult, but he harassed and bullied that woman for years. He created an environment where she didn't feel safe at work." My mom said, "We don't know that's true. We only have one side of the story, and your brother says he was just trying to help her succeed." I said, "Mom, there was an investigation. They found substantial evidence. Multiple people testified against him." And my dad jumped in. "They were on speakerphone. That doesn't mean it's true. People lie. Companies are quick to take the accusation side because they're afraid of lawsuits. Your brother is a good person who made some mistakes, and right now he needs his family." I said, "He spent years bullying me and you enabled it. You let him make my childhood and adolescence miserable. And now you're surprised that he treats other people badly?" My mom said, "That's not fair. You had a normal sibling relationship. All siblings tease each other." And that's when I realized we were never going to have a real conversation about this. The escalation. Over the next few weeks, my parents' guilt-tripping campaign became relentless. They called me constantly asking me to reach out to Ryan and let him know you're there for him. They asked me if I'd consider letting him stay with me because my apartment had a guest room and they needed to give him space, but also didn't want him to be alone. I said absolutely not. They implied that my lack of support was why Ryan was spiraling. My mom actually said, You know, if you were closer to your brother, maybe this wouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have felt so alone that he'd act out like this. I'm sorry, what? My lack of closeness with my brother caused him to harass a woman at work? That's the narrative we're going with? Then came Thanksgiving. My parents asked me to come home for the holiday, which I actually did, because I wasn't going to let them use my absence as another thing to blame me for. But they'd also invited Ryan without telling me, presumably hoping that I'd be surprised into just accepting the situation. When I walked into my parents' house and saw Ryan sitting in the living room, I turned around and started to leave. My mom grabbed my arm and said, "Katie, please. We're all family. We need to get through this together." I said, "You're right, we are family, which is why I deserve basic respect and basic acknowledgement of how he's treated me. And instead, you're asking me to pretend everything is fine while you treat him like the real victim." My dad actually got angry at me. He said, "Your brother is going through the hardest time of his life, and you can't even be a decent human being and spend Thanksgiving with him?" I said, "He bullied me for 17 years, and you let it happen. And now he's facing actual consequences for bullying an adult woman, and somehow I'm the bad guy for not wanting to come for him. That's not how this works." I left. I didn't go to Thanksgiving. I spent it alone at my apartment, which was actually kind of nice if I'm being honest. The aftermath and the guilt campaign part 2. After Thanksgiving, my parents basically cut off communication with me. Not officially, but you know the kind where they only text you on your birthday and answer your calls with one-word responses? That kind. My mom told one of my cousins that Katie abandoned her brother when he needed her most, and that little gem made its way through the family. Suddenly, other relatives were reaching out asking me why I was being so cold to Ryan. I had to have conversations with multiple family members explaining that I wasn't being cold. I was exercising healthy boundaries after years of bullying and parental enablement. Some people got it. Some didn't. My brother, for his part, did reach out to me once. He sent me a text that said, "I'm sorry you're upset with me. I know I wasn't always the best brother, but I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me so we can move forward as a family." That's not an apology. That's not accountability. That's just a manipulation tactic wrapped up in flowery language. I didn't respond to it. The current situation. It's now been about 5 months since Ryan was fired. He's been in and out of my parents' house. He's not really working as far as I know. Sarah's divorce is moving forward. He's apparently seeing a therapist, according to my mom, who seems to think that should fix everything. My parents have basically decided that I'm the problem in all of this. They think I'm being vindictive by not supporting Ryan. They think I should let the past go and focus on family healing. They don't get that my boundaries aren't punishment. They're survival. They don't understand that I can't simultaneously acknowledge that my brother bullied me for decades and that my parents enabled it, while also wrapping my arms around him and saying everything is fine. They're asking me to be the bigger person. They're asking me to forgive without him actually asking for forgiveness or showing any real understanding of what he did. They're asking me to prioritize family harmony over my own emotional well-being. And honestly, I'm done. The thing that really gets me, what really pisses me off, is that my parents seem genuinely surprised by how Ryan turned out. They act like this workplace harassment situation came out of nowhere, like their perfect son suddenly became a bad person. But he didn't become a bad person. He was always like this. The only difference is that Michelle had the courage and the documentation and the support system to actually report him, whereas I was a kid who didn't have any of those things. My brother bullied me for years and faced no consequences. So he learned that bullying works. He learned that people will enable it. He learned that charming people will cover for you. And then he did the exact same thing to someone else. And only when an adult in a professional setting reported it did anyone finally care. That's not Michelle's fault. That's not my fault. That's my parents' fault for creating an environment where Ryan never learned that his behavior had consequences. And now, instead of addressing that, they want me to be the emotional cushion that makes Ryan feel better about the consequences that finally came. I'm not doing it. Where things stand now, I'm going to therapy, which has been really helpful. My therapist has confirmed that my response to all of this is healthy and appropriate, and that my parents' guilt-tripping is actually a form of emotional manipulation. I've told my parents that I'm willing to have a relationship with them, but only if they acknowledge that they enabled Ryan's bullying for years and ask me how I'd like to move forward. I've also told them that I'm not willing to have a relationship with Ryan until he demonstrates actual understanding and accountability for how he's treated both me and Michelle. My mom said, "We can't make Ryan do something he's not ready for, and we can't change the past." I said, "I'm not asking you to change the past. I'm asking you to acknowledge it and to respect my boundaries in the present." She hasn't responded to that yet. My brother is apparently working on himself, according to my parents, who deliver updates like I should care. I don't particularly. I wish him well enough. I hope he gets therapy and learns to be a better person. But that's not my responsibility, and my healing doesn't depend on whether or not he gets there. My friends have been incredible through all of this. My work friends, my chosen family, they've been much more supportive than my actual family, which is both sad and also kind of clarifying. Why I'm writing this. I'm writing this because I needed to get it out, but also because I wanted to speak directly to anyone who's in a similar situation. If you're the sibling who got bullied while your parents enabled it, you're not crazy for being angry. You're not selfish for setting boundaries. You're not being vindictive by refusing to comfort your abuser just because they're finally facing consequences. Your pain was real when it was happening, even though no one acknowledged it. Your boundaries are valid now, even though your family might try to make you feel guilty for having them. You don't owe anyone emotional labor. Not your bully. Not your parents if they enabled the bullying. Not your extended family if they're pressuring you to move on and be the bigger person. Sometimes the thing that heals you is the refusal to participate in the system that hurt you. Sometimes the healthiest choice is to walk away. I'm still processing a lot of this, and I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. But I know this. I'm done accepting crumbs of acknowledgement from people who spent my entire childhood telling me I was the problem. If they want a relationship with me, they're going to have to do the work to understand what they did. And maybe they will, and maybe they won't. But I'm going to be okay either way. Edit 1. A lot of people have asked if I think Ryan will ever actually take accountability. Honestly, I don't know. From what my mom has told me, and I take most of what she says with a grain of salt, he's been defensive in therapy and spends a lot of time explaining why the accusations were misconstrued or taken out of context. So probably not. But again, that's not my problem to solve. Edit 2. Someone asked if I worry about being estranged from my parents. Yeah, I do. It sucks. But I've realized that the relationship I had with them wasn't actually that good. I was just used to it. They made me doubt my own perception of reality for years. That's a form of abuse, even if it wasn't intentional. I'm hopeful they'll come around, but I'm not holding my breath. Edit 3. To the people saying I should just move on and not hold grudges, thank you for proving my point. This is exactly the kind of pressure I'm talking about. I'm not holding a grudge. I'm protecting myself from people who didn't protect me. There's a difference.